Welcome back, and now for the news in detail. In the United Kingdom, the death toll from the novel coronavirus has surged past 36,000 after another 338 people died in the last 24 hours. Earlier, the United States reported more than 1,500 deaths in a day, pushing the country's tally to over 93,000. Globally, the virus has claimed more than 328,000 lives, with over 5 million cases of infection. More in this report.
Despite hundreds of deaths every day in the US, all 50 American states have partially reopened after a 2-month shutdown. The outbreak is on a sharp rise in Latin America, as Brazil has recorded 888 deaths and Mexico registered 424 in a single day. Meanwhile, the World Health Organization has warned that the pandemic is a long way from being over.
In the last 24 hours, there have been 106,000 cases reported to WHO, the most in a single day since the outbreak began. Almost 2/3 of these cases were reported in just 4 countries.
The pandemic is threatening to ruin tourism industry, vital to many countries' economy worldwide. New Zealand wants employers to consider switching to a 4-day work week to promote tourism in the country. Greece has also announced to kick off its tourist season next month, with international charter flights resuming in July.
The tourism season will begin on June 15th, a date on which seasonal hotels will be able to open. And gradually from July 1st, direct international flights will begin towards tourism destinations. There will be sample testing for visitors, and health and hygienic protocols will be adhered, which will not cast a shadow on our bright sun nor the natural beauty of Greece.
China's central city of Wuhan, where the pandemic originated, has issued a total ban on the hunting, breeding and human consumption of wild animals. The mainland has reported only 2 new coronavirus cases, including 1 imported case.
Pakistan's COVID-19 death toll has risen to 1,017 as the country recorded 32 new deaths since yesterday. The health ministry says nearly 2,200 new cases were reported, bringing the total to over 48,000. The ministry said 14,155 patients of the coronavirus have recovered so far. It said over 17,300 infections were recorded in Punjab, nearly 19,000 in Sindh, and more than 6,800 in Khyber Pakhtunkhwa. Meanwhile, Balochistan has reported almost 3,000 cases and the capital Islamabad 1,235. Meanwhile, the UN and Pakistan have launched a cash assistance program for refugee families hit hard by the deadly virus. Under the program, 36,000 families will receive rupees 12,000 each for 4 months. Pakistan says the collective brutalization of innocent Kashmiris by New Delhi is one of the worst war crimes in history. Foreign Office spokesperson Aisha Farooqi said Indian-occupied Kashmir has been under an inhumane lockdown and military siege for the last 290 days. Farooqi said Pakistan rejects Indian designs to change the demography of Indian-occupied Kashmir through its newly inducted domicile law. At the weekly press briefing, she said India is continuously targeting civilians across the line of control. The spokesperson said Pakistan supports the Afghan peace and reconciliation process. Islamabad urged all the Afghan leaders to work together to bring peace to the war-torn country. A powerful cyclone has ripped through the densely populated coastlines of India and Bangladesh, leaving 84 people dead. Luckily, the evacuation of nearly 3 million people before Cyclone Amphan made landfall saved countless lives. Officials said the full extent of the casualties would only be known once communications were restored. They said the cyclone devastated coastal villages and torn down power lines, besides flooding over large tracts of land. The storm is the first supercyclone to form in the Bay of Bengal since 1999 and is equivalent to a Category 5 hurricane. The Taliban say any mechanism other than the Doha peace deal will further impede the already harmed Afghan peace process. In a meeting with the US envoy Zalmay Khalilzad in Doha, the group's leaders discussed the implementation of the pact. Spokesperson Suhail Shaheen says the Taliban told Khalilzad that further delay will only make matters worse. Khalilzad also met President Ashraf Ghani and High Council for National Reconciliation head Abdullah in Kabul. The US envoy said violence by all sides must fall as innocent Afghans have borne far too much in the war. He said all sides are responsible for the implementation of the Doha deal, including the prisoner release by the Afghan government and the Taliban. The US envoy to South Asia, Alice Wells, has praised Pakistan for its solid cooperation for peace in Afghanistan. In an online media briefing, Wells reflected on the US policies in the region during the past 3 years. The envoy said the US has seen a strong collaboration between Khalilzad and Pakistani leadership to bring the Taliban on negotiation table. She said improvement for a stronger US-Pakistan partnership is premised on ability to work together constructively to advance peace. Answering a question, Wells said it is important for India to be close to Taliban as part of its traditional ties with Kabul. The envoy said the US is seeking to have a political settlement, seeing the Taliban as part of the government structure in Afghanistan. The US has approved a $180 million sale of heavyweight torpedoes to Taiwan. The State Department said proposed weapons sale serves the US national economic and security interests. It said sale will also help improve security of recipient and assist in maintaining political stability, military balance, and economic progress in the region. It said Mk-48 Mod 6 advanced technology heavyweight torpedoes, which can be launched from submarine, are being provided from existing US Navy stock. The move is likely to further escalate tensions between Washington and Beijing as China considers Taiwan as a part of its territory. Meanwhile, China has slammed the US for its decision to congratulate Taiwan's President Tsai Ing-wen on her inauguration. The Foreign Ministry said US Secretary of State Mike Pompeo has seriously damaged the peace and stability of the Taiwan Strait. China says the United States is blackmailing the Hong Kong government with the Human Rights and Democracy Act. In a statement, Beijing said it will safeguard its sovereignty, security, and development interests. The Chinese Foreign Ministry's Office of the Commissioner to Hong Kong accused Washington of interfering in China's internal matters. This comes after US Secretary of State Mike Pompeo questioned the recent treatment of pro-democracy activists in Hong Kong. Pompeo said the recent events make it harder to assess whether the territory remains autonomous from China. Iran has dismissed new US sanctions on several Iranian officials as fruitless. In a media briefing, Foreign Office spokesperson Abbas Mousavi said these curbs point to the inefficiency of the previous ones. He said Washington's repetitive sanctions against Iranian officials are a sign of weakness. The spokesperson said such steps show the despair and confusion of the US administration. Yesterday, the US sanctioned Iran's Interior Minister, Abdulrazak Rahmani Fazli. The Treasury Department said the fresh round of curbs targeted 9 individuals, including the minister, and 3 entities in total. Iran's Supreme Leader Ali Khamenei has said Tehran will support any nation that opposes and fights the Zionist regime of Israel. In a message, the Supreme Leader said Iran has no hesitation in declaring this. He said the comprehensive struggle by Palestinians should continue till usurpers submit to a referendum. He said the people of Palestine must determine what political system they want. Khamenei said a proposal for a referendum to choose the type of the government in Palestine was registered with the UN as offered by Iran. The Supreme Leader said eliminating the Zionist regime doesn't mean eliminating Jews, as Iran is not against Jews. It's a time for a short break. We'll be back with more stories. Stay tuned. Welcome back. The UN has told Israel to drop plans to annex parts of the occupied West Bank, joining a growing international chorus of opposition. In a UNSC meeting, envoy Nikolai Mladenov also called on Russia, the US, the EU, and the UK to mediate. Mladenov said the continuous threat of annexation by Israel is the most serious violation of international law. He said it will be a devastating blow to the two-state solution and close the door to talks. The UN envoy said he will meet Palestine's Prime Minister Mohammed Shtayyeh today to discuss their latest statements. Meanwhile, France has also warned Israel against annexing the West Bank and said the move will be considered a serious violation. Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov and Turkish Foreign Minister Mevlut Cavusoglu have backed an immediate ceasefire in Libya. In a telephone call, the two foreign ministers supported the resumption of the UN's political process in the North African country. The two diplomats spoke a day after the Libyan National Army of warlord Khalifa Haftar said it had pulled back from some Tripoli front lines. Earlier, Libya's government of national accord said the forces destroyed 4 Russian-made air defense systems in Taruna city. Meanwhile, the Turkish Foreign Ministry said Ankara will target Khalifa Haftar's forces if its interests are endangered in Libya. Ankara has slammed EU Commission's Vice President Margaritis Schinas over his remarks on Turkey's failure to handle refugees. In a statement, Foreign Ministry spokesman Hami Aksoy said Schinas' remarks reflected the stance of Greece rather than that of European Union official. He said the Commission has not launched a serious investigation into violations of the rights at the European Union's borders. Aksoy said Schinas must first investigate the violations committed by the Greek officials. He said officials must also probe the rejection of asylum applications contrary to international treaties and the EU Asylum Directive. Aksoy said Turkey is not the bloc's refugee camp or a border guardian. Prime Minister KP Oli says people entering Nepal illegally through India are spreading COVID-19 in the country. The ties between the two countries have been strained since New Delhi inaugurated a road on land claimed by Kathmandu. In a parliament speech, Oli said the virus from India looks more lethal than Chinese and Italian. The Prime Minister said it has become very difficult to contain coronavirus due to the flow of people from outside. Discussing disputed land, he said Nepal will bring back the Kalapani, Limpiyadura and Lipulak areas at any cost. Recently, Nepal endorsed a new political map incorporating the 3 regions, which India claims its own. In the UK, a trial to see whether 2 anti-malarial drugs can prevent COVID-19 has begun in Brighton and Oxford. Chloroquine, hydroxychloroquine or a placebo will be given to more than 40,000 healthcare workers from Europe, Africa, Asia and South America. All the participants are staff who are in contact with COVID-19 patients. In the UK, the participants will be given hydroxychloroquine or a placebo for 3 months, while at sites in Asia, participants will be given chloroquine or a placebo. It will test whether the drugs can prevent healthcare workers exposed to the virus from contracting it. Meanwhile, Russia's biotechnology company BioCat says it will soon complete clinical trials of a drug for patients suffering from a severe form of COVID-19.
In the best case scenario, we can get the first permit for our coronavirus vaccine. I hope in late November or early December. I'm sure the first part of trials will be conducted on a limited group. After this test, the study will continue and it will include groups of patients that should additionally be included.
In Colombia, the use of drones to contain the COVID-19 pandemic and implement lockdowns has raised concerns about privacy. However, advocates of the technology say it's helping the government save lives. More in this report.
Colombian capital Bogota is home to 1/3 of the country's 17,000 COVID-19 cases. Since the pandemic started, drones have become a steady feature of the city's skyline. They're programmed to detect high body temperatures, which has proven invaluable for the government's fight to contain the virus.
Without a doubt, the use of these technologies from the National Police has been very useful in these orange alert areas. These drones that fly from 150 meters on average have the capacity to check people in the street and check their temperature.
Though this strategy has been effective, concerns have been raised about the technology violating citizens' privacy. But there are many citizens who say the use of drones is justified during this pandemic.
I think it is very good for what they're looking for that objective, but if it's for other things, then I wouldn't be comfortable. But I think it's excellent, of course. The more measures taken, the better.
Parts of the country have begun emerging from the lockdown, but the drones are still helping the government keep track of virus hotspots. This is yet another example of technology helping to keep national economies afloat during this pandemic. The coronavirus has killed over 600 Colombians so far.
Despite restrictions and curfew to stem the spread of COVID-19 outbreak, marketplaces in Afghanistan are overcrowded by shoppers ahead of Eid al-Fitr. What about Eid preparations in this report?
The Afghan government imposed curfew in mid-March to halt the coronavirus spread in the country. Schools and markets were closed, and all sports events and traditional festivals were cancelled. Despite the increase in infection cases and recent surge in violence, Afghans are preparing for traditional Eid. In Mazar-e-Sharif, people thronged an open-air marketplace to purchase dried nuts, sweets, and new clothes for the feast. Though many people are not coming out of their houses due to COVID-19, but still a large number of Afghans have flocked to the market.
The marketplace is very crowded as if there is no coronavirus disease. I came here to buy clothes and shopping. Coronavirus outbreak impacted the market. Despite this, the market is filled by shoppers, even if it is not as much as before. The crowd in the market has increased a lot. It was not like this a few days ago. Even so, many people do not leave their houses due to coronavirus outbreak.
According to the Health Ministry, the number of COVID-19 cases in Afghanistan has climbed to nearly 8,700, with more than 190 deaths.
The U.S. Navy says it has shot down an active shooter at its Corpus Christi Naval Air Station in Texas. Earlier, the shooter shot and wounded a security force member. In a statement, the Navy Information Office said the shooting occurred in the wee hours at the naval base. It said the personnel have been ordered not to move around unless they got clearance. The local police cordoned off the entire area following the incident. Last year, a gunman killed 3 U.S. sailors in an attack at the Pensacola Naval Air Station in Florida. Meanwhile, 3 people have been wounded after a shooting in the Arizona State shopping mall. Police said one of the 3 victims is in critical condition and a suspect is in custody. In Australia, 11 people have been injured after a sports car crashed into a shop selling traditional Islamic wear in Western Sydney. In a statement, police said the sports car crashed into another vehicle before ramming into a nearby shop in Bankstown. It said there was currently no indication that the crash was a terrorist act. Police said officers from Bankstown Police Area Command are at the scene and are conducting inquiries. Lows and the highs of the business world now. The U.S. stocks have climbed marginally higher, clawing back slight losses from earlier session. Investors also digested the latest weekly jobless claims data as another 2.4 million workers filed for unemployment claims. The coronavirus has forced nearly 40 million Americans out of work and onto state jobless benefit rolls in 9 weeks. Tech-heavy Nasdaq Composite gained higher as Facebook's shares climbed 3%, while the stocks of Amazon were also up 1%. The indices of S&P 500 and Dow Jones Industrial Average also traded higher at a fraction. Meanwhile, oil prices have jumped to its highest since March, supported by lower U.S. crude inventories, OPEC-led supply cuts, and recovering demand. European stock markets have declined after Eurozone PMI data indicated another slowdown in activity for region's manufacturing and services industry in May. Investor sentiments dampened, triggering a sell-off. Frankfurt's DAX has lost over 1%. CAC 40 in Paris is trading over 1% lower. London's FTSE 100 has lost nearly 1% after British hospitality chain Whitebread plunged 14%. In Asia, Shanghai Composite closed over 0.5% lower, while Hong Kong's Hang Seng lost about 0.5%. Seoul's Kospi bucked up the trend, while Nikkei 225 lost a fraction. International Olympic Committee says the Tokyo Games will have to be cancelled altogether if they cannot be held next year. The statement comes after Japanese Prime Minister Shinzo Abe said the event cannot take place in 2021 unless the virus is contained. Committee Chief Thomas Bach said it will be impossible to keep employing 5,000 people for another year. Bach said the entire sports schedule worldwide of all major federations cannot be changed every year with athletes in uncertainty. He said there are so many different options that it is not easy to address them. The chief said appropriate decisions will be taken after the committee has a clear view of how the world will look on July the 23rd next year. FINA has postponed the 2020 World Swimming Championships to December 2021 due to the COVID-19 pandemic. The competition was slated for December this year in Abu Dhabi, but now it will now be held from 13th to 18th of December next year. FINA had previously rescheduled the 2020 Aquatics World Championship in Fukuoka to May 2022 to avoid a clash with the postponed Tokyo Olympics. In Bosnia and Herzegovina, 3 young triathletes have started to train in a glacial lake after swimming pools were closed due to COVID-19. More about their activity in this report.
The world is on standstill due to the coronavirus outbreak. To stem the spread of the virus, schools, restaurants, gyms and public places have been closed. However, sportsmen are looking at different ways to keep on training. In Bosnia, 3 determined triathletes have started training in the breathtaking Borako Lake.
We came here already 6 times on Borako Lake to swim. We are keeping our condition. We are giving our best while the coronavirus is out there. We don't have so much choice anyway.
The triathletes believe swimming in the lake in Konjik province is a good substitute for the pool.
Another reason that we are coming here is that we know the distance until the other side. It is 800 meters. That's how we are keeping our condition.
They travel almost 100 kilometers several times a week to prepare for future races.
The pool is already closed for 2 months. Swimming is a specific sport, so it cannot be replaced by other types of training. That's why we come here a few times a week to keep up their condition.
Located at the foot of Prenj mountain with an altitude of 397 meters, Borako Lake is among the most important natural beauties of the country. According to stats, Bosnia and Herzegovina has confirmed 136 deaths from the pandemic and more than 2,300 infections so far.
And now the weather situation from around the globe. And that's all for now. For the latest updates, you can follow us on social media at Indus.News.